Welcome to the PHAROS Fit podcast, where we help you to explore your capacity to move better, push further, and achieve your limitless potential through fitness, nutrition, recovery, and lifestyle. Hey guys, welcome back to the PHAROS Fit podcast. Good to be back with you guys again. I'm super excited today. We are with the next generation of fight at PHAROS.
Yeah.
I have my dream team assembled in front of me. I have Graham Jenkins. Hey Graham.
Hi, how you doing?
Good. I have Aaron Michael. Hey Aaron.
What up?
And I have Katie-Michal. Hey Katie.
You know I don't
Michael.
love Katie.
Sorry. Every time I say it,
Katie-Michal.
I have a triggering thing about just
It's all
Katie.
right. Well,
Yeah.
I did that to you for so long.
For so long, but you knew it made me mad. But like, he's like my brother. He kind of gets under my skin. But like, you know, any other nicknames, Kim, Cam, KMP, Katie-Michal, Muscle Michael is kind of the best one.
Well, the scary thing is when you see Katie-Michal box and then you get a name wrong, it's like, oh fuck.
Yeah, it's real bad. It's real bad.
What's about to happen here? So obviously, Aaron Michael, Katie-Michal, you guys are new here. People have known Graham for a while, but I do want to kind of introduce all of you today, just to the kind of like everyone that listens to the podcast, get a little bit of idea of your background, how you found the sport, your experiences so far in the sport, and specifically what that sport has done for you as individuals. That can be on a fitness level or on a personal, emotional level, and just take it wherever you want to take it. So, Graham, why don't we start with you, and then you'll open this up.
I came into martial arts when I was 5. And so...
Oh, you've been doing this since you were 5?
I've been doing this since I was 5. So I've been doing this for a little over 25 years now. And I started off with the basic, like the martial arts, taekwondo and judo, and slowly got into Muay Thai and boxing.
What was that? Was there a parent
No, there wasn't. It was 2 things. It was a lot of Bruce Lee movies. And
when you were 5?
Yeah, when I was 5, a lot of Bruce Lee movies, and then a lot of bullying. Where
you were doing the bullying? Or
no. I was needing to learn how to defend myself because I was getting bullied a lot. So it was those 2 things. It was wanting to basically be Bruce Lee and to not also get my ass kicked every day at school. So it was a nice way to start. And then of course, you in these martial arts, you actually do start fighting and you start learning discipline and you start kind of developing not only some self-confidence, but ways to deal with certain problems, and the bullying stopped.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. We'll get into this a little bit later on, but a lot of people see people who do combat sports as, they're aggressive, or it's because they want to fight. The truth is, a lot of people get into it because they want to defend themselves, and they want to be able to, be protected and teach protection to others.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that, and we see it a lot in a lot of fighters as well, whether we see a lot of athletes that were kind of cultivated from a young age into something because they had a kind of a nice natural skill set. But then with people like George St. Pierre, there was bullying and there was wanting to learn that. And then, kind of getting into the competitive side of things as well.
Okay, so I kind of interrupted you there. But you were 5 years old, you started combat sports, and you've been doing it ever since.
Yes.
And at what point did you kind of has it just gone in phases from like taekwondo to boxing to kind of UFC style? Have you always just done everything? Or
it was a bit of phases. Starting off, I only had the movies and stuff to watch, so you're kind of trying to emulate a lot of that stuff.
You're film fighting.
You're film fighting. You're doing those things. But then it was I forget how young I was, but I saw Boss Rutan fight in Pride. It was either Pride or it was Pancras, and that was incredible to see the mixture of, all of these techniques. Yes. And then, just kind of like a little bit of grappling and things like that. So that started my interest in that as well, going like, okay, how does this work? And luckily at the local place I was going to, they were doing jujitsu and stuff there. So I started learning that. Unfortunately I was the smallest person in there. So it was a bit of a rough start because you're trying to learn from some, very much like adults who are already there, and they're kind of trying to teach a little kid and not like snap them in half.
Right.
So
I've had some experience
I'm just imparting it.
Thanks,
so it was very gradual, like you said. It was a nice addition. It was kind of layering a cake, sort of like you say, layering that cake.
And with Graham, you're probably the bounciest person I've ever met. You're incredibly bouncy. Was that genetic, or did you teach your bounciness over a period of time?
I think it might have been genetic. I come from a family.
Bouncy family?
Yeah. Everyone's like taller in my family, but they were all like cross country runners or soccer players and things.
Okay.
So there was a lot of that, like every year my dad challenging us to sprint competitions or, you know, like my brother was a varsity swimmer and stuff. And so I clearly don't have the height for that. But that I think that there's a little bit of balance. And I think it was also just learned. It was watching these fighters and just kind of going, okay, that's a nice way to be elusive, to kind of utilize both offense and defense as well. You know, you watch guys like, you know, Ali or my favorite heavyweight boxer is Evander Holyfield, and watching the way that he would bounce and move and how he was able to control distance with that. Yeah. And so I think it was a bit of learned, and then just thankfully I had some of the genetics to keep up with it. Yeah. Because that there are definitely some things in fighting that I would really love to be able to do well, but that's not happening. I'm gonna have to like, you know, reteach some things on like on a very genetic level. Sure.
And at what point did, you know, learning turn into teaching? At what point did you think, I want to teach this stuff?
I think it was when I actually moved here. I moved to LA about 6 years ago, and
where are you from?
Well, I grew up in DC, but I went to school in Chicago. Oh, so I was bartending and working nightclubs in Chicago for the years that I was there, and that is terrible. It's not. It's just, you know, you're up until 4 a.m. and dealing with a lot of people that aren't necessarily in the greatest mindset when they're out. Yeah. So were you bouncing in these nightclubs? Oh no, I wasn't bouncing. I was bartending. Right. And so like you're still kind of dealing with some things, but
So you weren't like Swayze in Roadhouse?
No, I wasn't like. I wish I was like Swayze in Roadhouse. I am. What was it? I am polite until I'm not. I don't have to be.
Right.
But
exactly. Be nice.
It was
time to not be nice.
It was good. It was a good switch. But when we came out here, you know, we were looking for something that would complement the fact that I have my degree in theater and acting. And so I found a place where I met Aaron Michael and Katie-Michal as well. And it was kind of this nice thing of like, oh, I've been doing this for so many years. It's a very natural fit to kind of come in and start teaching. But there has been a big learning curve. I would say that I am very much more of a student than I am a teacher. And so it's been nice to learn from these two as well, from some of the other people that I've met on how to, even just certain like linguistics on how to impart that knowledge rather than just being like, follow along with me. Yes. You know, and so.
Well, it's true of whatever you're coaching. If it comes very naturally to you, or you've been doing it for so long, because it comes so naturally, sometimes it can be hard to like convey that experience and that knowledge, and trying to like communicate with people who just don't quite get it, and their body doesn't move that way, and it doesn't respond the way that your body responds.
Exactly.
It's a very, you know, it's something that you have to teach yourself how to do that over a period of time.
I think, as you guys would know too, there's a lot of these things where certain questions that people have, it's because this is a sport, and it's a sport that's, you know, high level problem solving with like dire physical consequences. There's a lot of the answers are like yes and no. Exactly. It's kind of depending on what the opponent is doing. Because every game plan is different. You have to adapt it to what you do well. And so
a lot of people want answers, but there aren't really any complete answers.
There's not too many like wrong answers in boxing or whatever you're doing in combat, unless you don't do something, you know, like you could maybe do it wrong, but if you're not actively reacting, then like, then there's your wrong answer. But yeah,
it's true. Well, cause there's, you know, this sport too, if you watch it every weekend, it sometimes comes down to, I should have moved this way instead of that way. And that's how a whole fight can end. Yes. And it's a game of inches. And so that can be really hard to impart to someone who's coming into it, you know, new and maybe just wants to defend themselves. Yes. And they're kind of going,
it's like, but what should I do? It's like, well,
sprint really fast to begin with. Sprint.
And Graham, before we move on, just tell me briefly, like, what do you think is the biggest gift that this sport has given you? I mean, when we say sport, like we're kind of talking about combat sport in general right now because you have so much experience in so many different fields. But in general, being like a combat athlete, what has that given you as an individual?
I think it's there's nothing necessarily concrete. It's interesting that there's very tangible skills that can translate into like the intangible. And I think that very much the same way that combat has done for me has been the same way that I've heard, your wife Emily talk about it as well, where there's way to approach life in the same way that you train.
Yes.
And so especially coming at this as like the other half of my life being an actor, there's a lot of this ability to face things head on and just kind of jump in.
Right.
While also still trying to be vulnerable in the fact that you don't know everything.
Yes.
And and there's always ways to adapt and ways to kind of approach.
That's why the Rocky movies still have the best quotes of all time.
The Rocky movies,
you can use those quotes for pretty much any part of life.
Absolutely can. I think if he dies, he dies. Is probably the most.
We could spend a whole podcast on Rocky quotes.
But it's just. Yeah, you facing things head on while also knowing that you don't know everything, and that's a whole other hour here of translating that into like theater. But you train and you practice, but then anything can happen.
Yeah,
and you go in there and you just try to be you, and that's. But again, it starts getting more and more like metaphysical and, as we go on.
Of course.
Aaron Michael, let's move over to you. Tell me about yourself.
I started martial arts when I was 6 because of Bruce Lee.
Yes.
Was constantly watching.
It's a Bruce Lee fan club, right?
Bruce Lee.
I was constantly watching Bloodsport and Bruce Lee and just mimicking Bruce Lee all the time. And I was like, I want to do that. My parents were like, you want to do that? I'm like, yeah. So I started doing Taekwondo. And then I think a week later, they started doing it. And then
your parents did?
My parents started doing it. And then we started competing, doing tournaments. And I did it until I was about 12 and I got super burned out because we would train 2 to 3 times a day, every day.
Oh, wow. Yeah. With your parents?
With my parents.
Oh, my God.
It was brutal. Eventually, we started doing kickboxing.
As a family?
As a family. And I remember helping my dad train for a match. Oh. I think I was like 8.
That's crazy.
8 or 11 or something like that. And I was holding pads for him all day.
Your dad was training to fight very aggressive, tiny people. Right.
Yeah. So, and we also did Hapkido,
What's that?
Hapkido. It's a Korean martial art. It's you have grappling, takedowns, choke holds, arm bars.
How similar is that to Sambo?
I don't know because I don't know Sambo too well. Yeah. So I learned a bunch of different disciplines, and then after that, I got back into kickboxing because my dad kept teaching. He started teaching, and later on, he's like, "Hey, I need an extra instructor at this gym." So I was like, "Okay, I could do that." And I started teaching, and it was a totally different world.
Yeah.
And you could be a great fighter and a horrible coach.
Horrible, yeah, 100%.
And I think because I was so nervous, I was so barky. I was like, all right, everybody. Like just screw, and it's just.
I relate with that because when I was a little kid and you had to take over, it's like, okay, the only thing I know about is like Cobra Kai. So I just, or like Karate Kid. So you're just kind of like, you just strike hard and you strike fast and, no mercy. And it's just like, everyone's like, that's not what I'm here for.
Yeah.
Well, it's also compensation for feeling insecure. It's like you just overcome that with volume.
Yeah. Like nobody's going to listen to me. So I'm going to scream and I'm going to be really pissed off. And that wasn't the way. Right. And my coaching changes all the time. But eventually I went to Thailand and started doing Muay Thai. And I brought that back. It's a brutal sport and it's brutal training. And it was probably the best time I ever had training. Yeah. It was 5-minute rounds, 1-minute breaks. But in your breaks, you're doing 10 push-ups, 10 sit-ups. Yeah. Pour a cup of water on your head, which hurt because it was so hot. Right. And then, you're training for 2 hours. Yeah. And you have to do 300 sit-ups at the end of your session every day. Right. It was crazy. It was the coolest experience ever.
How long did you do that for?
I was there for a month, and then I just kept doing it when I got back.
Right.
So training felt easy after that.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, oh, like my endurance is amazing. And then when I came to LA, I got a job teaching boxing. But I started studying a coach named Barry Robinson, and he had a system. And he talks about things that are so unorthodox. Like he studies basketball teams, football teams, baseball teams. He comes from a military background. So his approach was always combat sports is behind. Like how come in basketball they're drilling how to shoot a free throw? He's like, but we're just trying to smash people. He's like, and our sport's more dangerous. Like in basketball, they're not getting concussions. We're getting concussions. Why aren't we drilling like they're drilling? So I think I started, looking outside of, oh, I just have to study boxing. I just have to study Muay Thai. It's like, no, you got to study everything.
Yeah.
And apply it. And I think that's helped me grow as a fighter.
Well, I think that's true of a lot. I mean, boxing, also soccer in the UK. When you look at strength conditioning of those sports in the UK, it's very behind like what you would find in NFL strength conditioning, that kind of stuff. They're still like doing laps of the the training field to like as their conditioning and stuff like that. Just very, very behind the times. And I think boxing, because it was such an old guard kind of sport. Yeah. It did get stuck, and it needed like new ideas and fresh blood, and it still does.
I remember
still now.
An interview with like Teddy Atlas, and he was talking about like, we didn't used to drink water like in the 70s or something. What?
Sure.
I need that. And he's just like, no, it makes you weak. But that's what we thought. And it's like, that's not good at all.
Right.
My best friends, I have to force her to drink water all the time. I'm like, can you just one cup?
Yeah.
I'm the same way too. It's bad. It's really bad for you not to drink water. Yeah.
And so what do you think? So you came to LA, you started teaching.
I started teaching, and I think when I started studying, I started realizing that you shouldn't just study one thing. You shouldn't be like, oh, I'm a boxer, I only study boxing. I did Muay Thai, so I can clinch. You can use that in your boxing, and most people, they don't even know that they can't even touch somebody, grab somebody's neck.
Right.
They can muscle them around, and not even just muscle, but there's technique to it and there's drilling to it. And
so much
got me behind the neck and threw me across the park. I was like, whoa, what happened?
Wrestling. And what I started learning is that you can apply footwork, everything to kickboxing, Muay Thai, boxing, wrestling. I remember watching a wrestling clip, and the guy's like, oh, I was studying Muhammad Ali. He's like, so I like to move left, right in a circle and then takedown. Because for him, it's not really about striking. It's about being in a good position.
Yeah, it's all about position. Yeah.
So that's what I learned when I was like, oh, it's not about combinations of the day. It's about
100%.
How can I always be in a fighting stance? Yeah. And how can I get into a good position to strike someone when they're not ready?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you really notice that when you first start sparring, or if you spar with someone who hasn't got much experience, it really has nothing to do with punching at all, and all to do with positioning of the body and footwork. That's it.
And the problem is a lot of people, they got a lot of heart.
Right.
So they're like, oh, I could take a punch. Sure. You can get smashed all day, or you could smash somebody all day. But the problem is either you get discouraged or the person you're fighting gets discouraged, and you didn't learn anything.
Yeah.
You learn how to do rock'em sock'em robots.
Yeah.
And I think it's not fun to be punished. I'd rather not be punished.
Right.
I feel like anybody can really fight. Like if you had to, you might be able to throw some punches here and there. But if you're wanting to learn the sport and do it correctly, you do need to take that time.
And what I'm hearing too is there's a longevity component as well.
Yeah.
When you watch the top people in the sport, even if you're not wanting to compete, there's it's like they're not doing that every day. They're doing drills and they're doing other things. And that's why I like what you said. It's like you didn't learn anything, and that's so important.
Well, I think that has been like the benefit of UFC. When UFC came along, I think they were more open to new ideas and more experimental in what they were doing. Whereas, like we're saying, like boxing was kind of stuck a little bit in the dark ages.
Yeah. Well,
we don't do it that way. We do it this way. It's the way we've always done it.
No, 100%.
That's a beautiful thing about MMA is like you have to have wrestling, you have to have jiu-jitsu, you have to have boxing, you have to have kicking. But what it comes down to is getting into good positions.
Right.
You know what I mean? And, you know, it's funny. I remember after the Mayweather-McGregor fight, McGregor said, oh, he had a really good clinch. And that's funny because it's like, well, if you're in MMA, you should always have a good clinch.
Right.
And I think, you know, people tend to think like, well, boxing, like I only train hands.
Right.
It's like, no, you should just train like how you do in MMA.
Right.
Because then you can probably beat boxers then, you know what I mean? Artem Lobov against Paul, I'm butchering his name, Magnani. They did a bare knuckle fight. Artem Lobov's an MMA fighter. He beat the boxer in a bare knuckle fight. You know what I mean? Because he was changing levels, things like that. So I think definitely have an open mind when it comes to combat sports. I can't remember the question, but yeah.
Well, what do you think? Well, there wasn't really a question. But there is a question now. What do you think this sport has given you as an individual?
If anything, it gives me an edge. And it's almost like I feel like I have like a little secret in my pocket. Because when I was growing up, I skateboarding.
Yeah.
Nobody really knew that I knew how to fight. And when I was fighting, nobody knew I skated. And I was always into film and art and music. And
dude, you and me have so much more in common. It's like I grew up skateboarding too, but I was terrible. But no, because I just working with you where we did, I feel like we always had like 5 minutes to just be like, hey, how you doing? Did you watch that thing? And then we always had to go. So it's nice kind of getting to know you more and more over the years because we realized this, like, oh, we like a lot of the same movies. And we skateboarding.
It's not just a fighting monkey.
No. And so it's just like, I don't know. It's just, I just wanted to add that. It's like, it's just cool getting to know everyone a lot more and like who you're working with because you guys have so much to you. And it's nice.
And I think that, and we're going to talk about misconceptions a little bit later, but I think that's true of a lot of when we look at like fighters or we look at people who are in like strong positions, we often like don't consider the underbelly, their emotional underbelly, like what's really driving that, what's underneath it all, what were their experiences like growing up,
right?
Because there's often like a pretty tender story to what seems to be a very alpha sport, you know,
big time. And I think I like because I was always I don't know, like I guess I was a little bit softer spoken. You know, when I got older, I was goofy. I was always goofy. I was always having fun. I just liked being in this like fantasy world of like my movies and things like that. But when it came to fighting, I was so sharp.
Yeah.
And I was so dedicated. And I think when I talk about edge, it just means that I have a skill.
Yes.
And I could tap into this other mind state that I might not have when I'm walking around everyday life. Like when I'm coaching, it's almost the complete opposite of who I am.
Yes.
And it's funny because when I make decisions in life, I'm like, well, why don't I just do it like how I coach?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
make decisions, be decisive. And instead, like, it's something a little different. So I think that it gives me a sense of pride. I have a sense of skill. Like I said, I have this like little secret. Like it makes me like I have that in my heart. It's like I know how to fight.
And I think that is true of fitness that teaches you something. Fitness that has a skill component. You know, whether it's boxing or whether it's Olympic lifting or anything like that. Anything where you have to learn something in your fitness journey as opposed to just doing fitness for the sake of doing fitness.
Exactly.
Is what keeps people engaged and keeps people coming back as long as it's done well and taught properly.
I completely agree.
I think that's one of the best things about, and the fight program that we're teaching here, I think that's one of the best things about it. You will learn something
100%.
and you will walk out of the room with a skill set. Yeah.
And I would say too that you feel strong.
Yes.
Like in whatever you're doing, that was a big shift for me in just exercise in general, was moving from this like kind of look based kind of thing, you know, like in your early 20s, you're just trying to like, you know, have the six pack and like look good and do all these things. But it's it's very reactive on like what your mental state is that day, and like, you know, just if you're dehydrated or not. Like,
Right, yeah.
Whereas if you're coming in and learning something or just kind of doing things that just build your strength, that will always be there. No matter what, you can still go home at the end of the day and just be like, I feel capable.
Yeah.
You know,
And it's also using your brain.
Yes.
I remember, I first got into boxing because I was always a gym rat. And I was in my early 20s and I was just bored. I've been bench pressing and squatting and shit for years. Like, I need something else. I need to teach myself something. And that's why I started boxing. So I needed, you know, stimulus.
yeah, something, yeah.
And I think that's what draws a lot of people in.
Yeah, I think for me too, I always tell people, they're like, well, what are you going to teach me? I'm like, I'm going to teach you intellect. You know, I'm going to teach you to be smart. You're going to be a smart fighter, and then you're going to end up being smart in life. You know, because you can apply the things that you learn.
Be a smart fighter.
It's like it's like building a D&D character. You're just adding shit to my intelligence.
Yeah.
And it's going to be really cool.
Because I think people often, they're like, I just want to work out, but they don't want to have that mental workout. You know, it's kind of like when you teach someone how to lift, they got to learn how to technically lift properly, or they're going to get hurt.
Yeah.
But
It's the same with boxing. If you don't have those fundamentals and techniques, you shouldn't just go on the bag and like try to hit as hard as you can. I mean, you'll for sure hurt your hand.
yeah, so you always got to use your brain.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You got to turn it on.
Katie-Michal, let's
So-
move on to you.
My
Get ready
experience,
for this one.
Yeah,
guys.
right.
This one's going to take a while.
Yeah, right. No, my experience is
Hold on, can I get some earplugs real quick?
Okay, I am a naturally loud person. I'm not going to apologize for it. But my experience is way different than these guys. I started boxing 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I had already moved to LA. I was a cheerleader and a dancer when I was younger. So I was learning something as like my athletic ability as a kid. So when I came out here, like doing the regular fitness stuff was cool. But just like you, I was bored. And I just walked into a boxing gym, and then I was like, oh, I like this. And I walked into another one, and then all of a sudden I was like offered a job.
Right.
And it happened so quickly, and I got really good at boxing so fast, which like I'm so proud of myself that I was able to. But I think one of the experiences I had is a lot of pushback from one being a woman in the fitness industry, but then on top of that in a combat sport, like you just don't, people look at you. I'm also just 5'3", by the way. So like people are just like looking down at me literally and figuratively, you know? So I think one of the experiences is like, I'm always having to kind of prove that even though I've only been doing this for 5 years, the proof is in the pudding. You know, I got a job as a assistant coach, and then about 6 months later, I was a head coach, and now I'm here.
Well, I will say that your learning curve was very quick.
Thank you.
And it goes into the thing of like, I've always hated the whole Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours thing because it makes it if you look into it, you can make it much more than it is. But I've always looked at something as like intensity and focus is what, you know, will kind of breed that growth. And it can happen in an hour if you're
and the
focused,
thing is, I think,
which is what you did.
Yeah.
And so that was nice to see because, you know, working with you, there was a very fast learning curve, which was nice.
Well, I bet that dance and cheerleading background helped because I mean the same thing with Vanessa, right?
Yeah.
She was a great boxer, and it was a lot of it came from she had a dance background. She understood movement. She understood her body. She could move.
That's exactly what it is. There's definitely different types of intellect in the world, and one of them is in fitness and knowing your body. So yeah, that's kind of where it all began, just of being bored. And then I was like, oh shit, like I'm good at this. This is great. And then I feel like what it's given me, I mean, there's so many things, but it's given me something else that I love to do because I'm also an actor. So when you come to LA, you have to have something that supports you. And being able to work at a place that I love to work and do something I love to do. I mean, I love boxing, but I also love teaching it. And I feel like I've become a good coach in the terms of knowing how different everybody's going to learn something different. And coming from like school, I have ADD and I'm dyslexic, and we all probably came from a school that was like, there's only one way of learning something, and if you can't learn it that way, like, sorry, you're shit out of luck.
Yeah.
So coming from that and then going into a teaching career, like you have to notice when you say something and it's like it clicks for those two people, but the next two people it's not going to click for. And be able to learn from that. And that's been really fun as a coach as well, to just help everybody try to learn the way that I did.
I would imagine as a woman, as a 5'3" woman, it's pretty empowering.
Oh,
to be-
100%. 100%. I mean, just like Aaron Michael, like a little secret in your pocket.
Yeah.
I mean, you never expect that I could beat you up, but like if I wanted to.
How many boys have you been up?
I haven't been. Not on purpose. But no, yeah, I think the sport definitely empowers you as a woman. I mean, I wouldn't say that like if somebody, you know, sticks a gun in my face, I'm going to be able to punch him out,
Sprint.
right? However,
sprint away.
Yeah. No, totally. And yeah, I would never say that you should go into a place being like, yeah, I can beat somebody up.
Yeah.
But like, I've always had a sense of confidence. And like, growing up, when I would go to Las Vegas all the time when I was a little kid, my mom was always like, just walk like you know where you're going and nobody will fuck with you. So I've always had this like confidence of, because you're a woman, you're always looking behind you. You never know what's going to happen. And I think this, like having this boxing ability just kind of gives you that more empowerment to where like, you know, if I get in a position where somebody is trying to hit me and I'm going to hit them back, I'll do some serious damage, which feels nice.
So let's just kind of talk collectively, and we already kind of touched on it, about the benefits of this kind of training and our fight program specifically. We've talked about empowerment. Yeah. Obviously, we've talked about it's going to get you fit. We've talked about the art of learning a skill and the mental engagement you get from that. And the growth you get from that, because the great thing about learning a skill is that there's always more things you can learn from that skill. It's never ending, right?
It's never ending. That is what I love about boxing. I definitely feel like we're all really good here, but there's always something new that you see or you learn from a coach. You're like, oh my gosh, this is exciting. I get to do this and frill it and perfect it and then do the next thing.
Well, I've been telling people that you know, because MMA is such a like the fastest growing sport, that every single weekend I watch a fight, I'm like, I gotta get rid of some things and replace it with some stuff because of how it's changing.
Yeah.
Do you think, and I may be wrong about this, and I probably am wrong, but do you think UFC has like peaked at all? Do you think it like? No. You think it's still?
I think that in the next 10 years we're gonna look back at people right now and just be like, wow, they were good. Like the same way that we look back at people like Chuck Liddell, or we look at Randy Couture or Anderson Silva, they were amazing.
Yeah, I don't mean peaked in terms of like the quality of the fighters. And what they're capable of. Do you think in terms of popularity, it's peaked? Because it felt for me like there was a time when it was like getting, and then now it's not that like they're struggling to find like great fights, because there are like still great fights in UFC. There's a lot more great fights in UFC than there are in boxing. But I'm just like, I sometimes wonder if it has got to that point where like we've seen the best against the best and now they're like struggling to find.
I don't think.
Or is there a next generation coming through?
I think the next generation coming through and the one after that is just going to continue to climb as far as skill and how they make the sport change.
Right.
And then I think that there's also just a political component to it as well, like rule sets and things as well. You know, they got rid of a lot of rules from Pride because people, for some reason, didn't want to watch other people get stomped on and soccer kicked for some reason. But no, it's, you know.
Well, I think honestly, in the beginning, it felt a lot more just like violence. It was kind of a lot more like, let's just put two people in the ring and let them fuck each other up.
Yeah. And from different disciplines. Like, all right, here's a sumo wrestler and here's this kung fu guy. Like, let's see what happens.
It's honestly the same thing as why people love like wrestling, right? Because it's like, just put two big people in the ring.
It's like Street Fighter. It was like watching, you know. Like.
But now it truly is an art. It truly is like people learning all of these different skills to the very best of their ability, and then plotting like a chess match against the other people who are the best at that stuff. And you have to be so good now to be anywhere that it really is, like I said, an art form. And the people who are following it, like you guys, you know, you're not idiots.
No,
like
I hope not.
You are very,
I have my moments.
You know, intellectual, like very. You're watching it like a chess match. You're studying it like an art form, and not just like you're not in it for the violence. You're in it for like the technique and the ability and the performance.
I think it will continue to grow, both in skills. It'll continue to grow, and I think the popularity will continue to grow as more and more. Unfortunately, with companies investing, the fact that like you have BMW supporting people in different countries as well is a big thing with the UFC that I haven't seen as much in boxing because of the commissions. You're getting people like McGregor is by far not the best fighter at all, but he has an entire country behind him. And you have people like, we see it with Russia, we see it with, you know, New Zealand and Australia and, you know, all of these places where people can kind of really identify with a flag and with someone representing their background.
Yeah.
And so I think that as we see more sponsorships with those individuals and those countries, and everyone just kind of starts to kind of meld a little bit more, I think it will continue to grow.
And is boxing doomed?
I don't think I wouldn't want to say it's doomed, but there's definitely a lot of problems when it comes to commissions and when it comes to organizing fights and these purses. Like, I'm really a big fan of Canelo talking about there should be one champion in every weight class. There should be one belt. There should be these. And I think that that's a nice thing to learn from UFC. Whereas I think that with the UFC and places like ONE and all these other places can learn from boxing is to pay their fucking fighters more.
Yeah.
And to actually allow them to have some sponsorships and stuff, because the pay in MMA is abysmal compared to boxing. And that's why a lot of people are going over and doing YouTube fights and stuff, because they're able to make $500,000.
And if you're putting your body on the line, like
it's rare when you get someone that can fight into their mid to late 30s.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like you got a good maybe 7 years to make like a statement, and then you should get out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but that's only true in boxing as well for the people who are fighting at the top level. Like, there's so many journeyman boxers that have been doing it their whole lives for very little money and come out the other end like, oof, in a mess. It's brutal.
Yeah. It's really brutal.
It is a brutal sport.
I think that MMA boxing could be more popular if we stopped treating the fans like they're stupid.
Yeah.
I think part of why I think there's so much sensationalism and like they hit him with the right hand and he's tired, he's not doing enough strength and condition. If we just educated the fans like they do in basketball, because when you hear the announcers, they're talking about like, oh, their defense is great because of da-da-da-da, or like, this is why they're losing. They're just calling out what they see.
Right.
But when I hear now, sometimes I'll like put the MMA matches on mute.
Yeah.
Right.
I'll completely agree with you.
The stupid comments.
I feel like the best commentators are the ones that are the ex-fighters, like the Dominic Cruzes and the Paul Felders and stuff, that can actually just be like, I hit him with a double leg. And you're just like, what is that? And it's like, well, look it up. Like, and you'll educate yourself with it. Yeah.
There's so many basketball and football fans who don't even play basketball or football, and they know what's going on in the game.
Right.
That's how you get a lot of coaches, maybe they weren't the best athlete, but they understand the game.
Yeah.
And I think people, when they watch fighting, it's almost like we treat them like, well, you'll never be great because these guys are gods. These ladies are gods. But it's like, no, they had a practice and they have deficiencies, and then they have skills that they're really good at. So let's educate them and tell them, okay, this is what's exactly going on. Yeah. And this is how they got into a good position to get this knockout, as opposed to, he slipped and threw that right.
And speaking about treating the audience like idiots, you now have people like, what's his name? Jake Paul?
No, the
right.
Where we just fought with the YouTube thing?
Jake
the YouTube. Yeah. Fighting and Grant sponsoring them, and I don't know whether you follow Grant on Instagram, but I do. And the amount of abuse Grant got. Posting pictures of this guy, it was just hilarious. It's like,
good.
The audience doesn't want this. Like, it's so disrespectful to fight fans. I mean, there's a YouTube audience that want it. Yeah. There's that generation, but it's like fight fans are just like, this is like, what have you done?
Yeah.
I think it's kind of funny because does it bring in money? Yeah.
Sure.
Can anybody be a fighter? Yeah, I think so.
Right.
Can you be the most hated person in the world and be a fighter? Definitely. So, and it's almost like he's playing a role. Like, all right, I'm going to be the obnoxious villain.
Right. I mean, I don't even blame him. Like,
and the thing is he's got the money to hire the best coaches.
Right.
And he's been doing it for 2 years. So you can kind of like, there's things that, you can't blame him, and he just kind of adds to that villain role.
Right.
And then people but that's the thing. We talked about wrestling or with boxing or with UFC, the sensationalism. It's people like drama. There's a lot of people that watch
drama.
fights
They want
because
to know.
it's built. Yeah, you get the drama.
The thing that I can't stand is when the audience like boos, because it makes me feel like they don't actually understand what's going on in the fight, which usually they don't. When they boo because they want to see blood, they want to see somebody knocked out. And I'm like, you try to go just one round for 3 minutes, just keeping your hands up. And I bet you can't. And now these two people are trying to kill each other, and potentially they're trying to do it in a smart smart way so that they don't get knocked out and now you're booing. And I'm just like, come on. I think I love a good fight, but at the same time, I cringe when somebody is starting to bleed or gets knocked out, because you're just like, the consequences of that is a lot.
It's a lot.
Just for your amusement.
It's a lot to be a fighter.
Come on, you guys.
This is another like social media problem, because it used to be like with boxing, you would fight amateur. Before you fight amateur, you would grow up boxing. Then you would fight amateur, and then eventually you might go pro. There was a funnel. Now it's just like, well, you can get famous on YouTube, and then you can be a professional fighter.
Yeah,
it's like it's a totally different.
It's interesting.
It's free for all.
It's funny. I remember I was watching Anderson Silva fight, and he got knocked out. And I remember my friend's like, "Yeah, I'm so glad he got knocked out." I'm like, "Why?" She's like, because he's an asshole and he showboats. And it's like, that's good that he's showboating. Like, it works to his advantage. He almost uses it as a tool when he fights. So I think people watch it from a personal standpoint. Right. I don't like this person because they're a bad person. Yeah. Instead of like, is this person a good fighter or are they not a good fighter?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Dude, I've done that. Like early on too, when I'm trying to do things where I don't invest so much into fighters, because they're fighters that I really like, and I tend to just not like, I tend to watch them and just be like, just don't get hurt,
Right.
But it's not going to change anything. It's like the best person on that day will win. And if you're watching someone like a Jake Paul and they've done something bad, win or lose, it's not going to change those actions. Like the people that they've hurt in life, they're still hurt.
Yeah.
And so you're right in the way that like you're watching from an emotional standpoint.
Yeah.
And Jesus, I'm very antisocial when I'm watching. I'm like off in a corner.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, so let's move on to your favorite fighters of all time and why.
Oh.
Everyone knows mine's Rocky Balboa.
Who's your like in
the real world?
In the real world, yeah.
Not in fantasy world.
Well, I mean, we all have our favorite movie fighter.
I mean, I grew up watching a lot of Ricky Hatton, and I loved Ricky Hatton back in the day when he was at his peak. I also loved Duran. I love watching Duran fight.
Duran was great.
Duran's amazing.
But Tyson was always like, I loved like watching Tyson. I just loved the way he moved. I loved the whole power thing.
I love his videos now that he's older. It's so great. It's
just like, so I think like if I was trying to like imitate or visualize when I was like working the bag or anything like that, it was always kind of
always
it was always come forward fighters,
yeah,
as opposed to like defensive fighters. So it was always like I said, the Durans, the Hattons, the Tysons, those kind of come forward, powerful fighters.
I like that. I always
get punched a lot.
Yeah,
but they also had Duran and Tyson had amazing defense too, though.
Yeah,
they did. Eventually they figured out Tyson, but when Duran was training, like he was using wrestling.
Yeah, right.
He was manipulating hands, necks, heads. Like,
it was really cool.
You could be a pressure fighter as long as you have good skills, good defense.
Yeah,
good
and
controls.
I didn't really have that, so I
couldn't. No, that's true. I'm always trying to. If anyone ever watches me work combinations and stuff, or like, Katie-Michal and I were hitting mitts and stuff over this quarantine, like outside and everything. Like I'm sure you'd see every week there'd be like, oh, who did Graham just watch fight?
Yeah.
Right.
Because there was very much a lot of like emulating that happened.
Yeah.
And which is very, very fun, and it kind of really shows the things that you have, you're natural in, and the things that you're really not great in. Like, but yeah, as far as favorite fighters, I guess in boxing currently, Inoue Inoue is amazing, and everyone knows I love Canelo, but that's kind of a bit of a face of boxing. I like that you see very subtle changes in his approach depending on who he's fighting, and I really admire that.
I like Canelo as well.
There's a lot of things too, like when he fought Mayweather and lost, and then started incorporating a lot of similar tactics. There's a lot of this.
If he was to fight Mayweather now, I think the fighter he is now. Versus if you fought Mayweather at the same time, but he was the fighter he is now, do you think he would beat Mayweather?
I mean, I'm biased. I think I would say yes, as long as there didn't have to be like a catch weight anymore. If he didn't have to drain himself the way he did the first time.
Yeah.
I think so, yes, and there could be a lot of flack from that because it could go both ways. But I really like Canelo, and I think that he could figure it out. But I love Inoue in a way as well. He's another come forward fighter, pressure fighter for a guy who fights at 118 pounds. For him to have like a 90% knockout rate is insane.
Eddie Michael just flicked a rubber band. Trying to start a fight.
My ADD, I'm like, I have to
but then,
do something with my hand.
I'll keep it short for MMA because I know these guys are going to have a probably similar overlap, because I could go on for an hour about different reasons why certain fighters I love, but I'll always be a fan of Demetrius Johnson. I think he was such a great example of being able to mix up absolutely everything in fighting. And currently, this is going to be bad because it's kind of controversial, but Petr Yan, who was formerly the bantamweight champion and lost it on a illegal knee to the head. I really love his fighting style because it's a beautiful mix of Sambo and Muay Thai. And I think I also just like him because all of the other fighters that I love are really nice people, like Robert Whittaker, GSP, like people that don't create drama. And I like that. They go in, they do their job.
Yeah.
They do their job. Yeah. And Yan doesn't create drama. He's just evil. He is just pure evil. And it comes from like a real place.
Right.
And
he's like that bad guy in Warrior.
Yes. And I love it because the skills are there. The skills are there. He goes and he does his job.
Diabolical.
But I don't know what it is. Everyone else I love, like seeing Robert Whittaker fight this past weekend and stuff, and just how much of a gent he is. Yeah. And just like, and he's so good. Like, I will always root for those guys. But yeah, lately there's a weird thing with Yan. I'm happy that there's just this like super villain is fighting at
like Ivan Drago.
Yeah.
All right.
Who's your favorite video game fighter? That's what I want to know.
Oh, fuck. Like in like a proper fight game? Like,
like Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, don't matter.
This is the real question right here.
Yeah. This is the one that people really care about.
I'm probably going to come back to this and be like,
okay,
no, this one. Right. But off the top of my head, I always really loved Reptile.
Okay.
In Mortal Kombat. I always loved that like acid spit. that was cool.
Acid spit.
Because I know yours.
Yeah. I got a couple. I'll reveal them. As far as favorite fighters go, I think that nowadays I don't have a favorite fighter because when I watch fights now, I don't even cheer anybody anymore.
I'm trying so hard to get on your level, man. I'm trying to catch up.
I agree with that. Like just watching the fight for the fight and like whoever wins.
I try to critique and I try to figure out what they did, what they do right, what they do wrong, and how could I beat them.
Right.
That's what I look out for.
So you're your own favorite fighter, basically.
What's that?
You're your own favorite fighter.
Sure.
I should have chose that.
I think in the past, when I was definite victim of sensationalism, I was like, I like slick fighters. So I was like, I love Josh Kelly. He fights with his hands down. He has a lot of head movement. Right. And then I started criticizing, and I was like, oh, well, who were the people he was fighting? People that had a high guard that he could beat really easy. So when he started getting higher level opponents, he couldn't fight the way he fought.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, there's chinks in the armor.
It's so interesting when you see that, because I remember watching a ton of fighters growing up and it's like, this guy is incredible. Yeah. But then as soon as they get to the next level and they get beat, it's like, oh, they could only do that because they were fighting.
Yeah. So how about, I'll say the people that I've been learning a lot from would be Mayweather, because, people talk about his defense, people talk about the shoulder roll, but nobody's talking about that after he punches, he puts insurance after that punch by controlling, meaning that he's controlling someone's head, their gloves. He's making sure that they're not punching.
Yeah.
He's smart. He'll let people smother themselves, or he'll smother them so they can't punch. Yeah. I'm learning a lot of that. I'm learning about a lot from George Foreman.
Dude, he was great.
He's insane. George Foreman, he did, I'm going to talk about a knockout, but he did a knockout. I think it was George Cooney or Jerry Cooney, where he threw a right and then he walked to the right like he was going to go for a walk, like a nice walk outside, and threw an uppercut at the same time. So it looked like nothing, and he knocked him out with that uppercut. Got back to his feet. He did the same thing. Just walked one way, but threw a punch another way, and I thought that was beautiful.
Yeah.
There's another fighter, a new guy, and he's training with Canelo's coach, I believe, and his name's Julio Cesar Martinez. If you watch his fight against Charlie Edwards, it's like he's playing 3-card Monty with him. Basically, he's like showing him one thing, giving him something else.
Right.
So he would approach Charlie like, I'm chill and I'm violent. I'm chill, I'm violent. So he never knew when Julio was going to strike, and he had a really hard time. And it was a controversial decision because Julio won that fight. He knocked him down, I believe with a body shot. And as he was getting down, he punched him one more time as his knee hit the ground. So they was like, no contest. And I thought that was stupid, but because he won that fight, he terrorized him. So it's cool to see that kind of fighter because, I don't know, like I said, I like, Graham was saying evil fighters. This dude's evil. This dude's super evil.
I think it's just one of those things where we so rarely see. A lot of it is fabricated, like you were saying, it's sensationalized. It's people creating a persona, and I think it's really rare to see someone who like only ever smiles when they're fighting.
Right.
And that's a very weird, pure place to find, because there's because there are people like. I loved Boss Rutan growing up and still love him. But, he was never like an evil dude. He was just really good at fighting and kind of liked to compete. So I agree with you. But I'm also trying to get on your level of not having favorites and just only have people to learn from.
Trying to stay emotionally detached.
Oh my God, yeah. It's hard. I kind of go at everything very I've had to learn over the years. I go at everything very emotionally first and then have to bring it back, because I kind of start there, and I think it helps with certain artistic things. But
yeah, for sure.
I've had to learn, like even just relationships and stuff, that it's just kind of like, I'm just talking about dinner. You don't have to get all, It's like, well, why don't you love me?
And sometimes, when we watch film, we watch movies, we watch it just as a movie, and we're not trying to, how did they do the lighting? How did they do the editing? Things like that. But I always watch a fight and do film studies pretty much. That's how you get better as a fighter. That's how.
God, slow motion all the time on YouTube.
Yeah.
I'm like, let me
But
okay, and back. Okay, got it.
As a fan, though, like there's definite fighters I like to watch as a fan. Muhammad Ali. I love Stylebender, but I also didn't want to idol worship, because when you make someone a god, they're a god. Everybody's a human. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew eventually, someone was going to not treat Stylebender like a god. Like, oh my God, he's so elusive. Oh my God, like his strikes, like, and, he got put down on his last fight, and, Jan Blachowicz had a great guard, and Stylebender had a problem with that. So everybody's human.
Yeah.
But
everybody falls.
Well, and I think too, it's like you like you were saying too, you don't end up learning anything if you idol worship. You tend to just kind of go, they did amazing, and that's it.
Yeah.
You don't tend to go like, this was good, but where did they get caught in this round?
What did they do wrong?
Exactly.
You, YouTube's great. You got to go back. You got to rewatch the fight. There's going to be things that you miss.
So Muhammad Ali, Stylebender, Roberto Duran. I like old fighters. Henry Hank was really cool to watch.
Old soul, Mr. Aaron Michael.
We can all learn
Sugar
a lot
Ray
from Aaron.
Robinson. Yeah, I just love watching fights. I love MMA, kickboxing, Muay Thai, boxing. Like I said, I watch it from a critiquing study point nowadays. But
even as a client, honestly, if you go and watch any fight, like just pick a fight. It really doesn't matter, and slow it down. You'll learn stuff. Yeah. You can totally learn things.
Yeah. Okay, Katie-Michal, give it to me. Who's yours?
Well, my first one is gonna be Thug Rose. So I know Thug Rose, right? So she is crazy. When she was 9 years old, she got her junior black belt, which was like when I was 9 years old. I was like in Taekwondo.
Right.
And when I was 9 years old, I was like wanting to be the president and also eating praying mantises. So it's like, she is crazy.
You were eating praying mantises?
Yes, that was me as a kid.
That's the thing that I learned about you today.
I know, it's crazy. So like she's been doing this when she was like a little kid. And the thing that I really connect with her is that she's a smart fighter. And as a 5'3", 120-pound fighter myself, I have to be smart because the only people that I spar against are Aaron Michaels and our friend Gavin and Graham and like all these men. Like I rarely, well, there is one woman I fight with, but she has a fucking 6-foot wingspan, Courtney. So it's crazy. So I have to be very like in and out, slick, smart. And I feel like when she fights, the people that she's fighting, they don't even know what happened until they're on the ground. And then the one I just want to shout out is Zhang Weili, Wielle. She's the first person from China that won a championship at the UFC. And she's the first woman, but also man, woman, everybody in between from China. So I thought that was really cool. And her whole story is she was watching Ronda Rousey when Ronda Rousey was like blew up out of nowhere, right? And she was so empowered by the fact that Ronda Rousey was this woman and a fighter and everybody was really respected of her and like honestly scared. And coming from China, she was saying how she, you know, comes from a place that like really doesn't respect women, which is a storyline around the whole world, you know? Some places is worse than others, but for her, she's like, that's what I fucking want to do. And she was doing Kung Fu since she was a little kid and then switched over to mixed martial arts and then came to the US. So a lot of her fights were in China and then came to the US. So I just thought that like, that's a cool story for a woman, just like,
and
they
they fight this weekend.
I know, and they both fight. So like, here's the thing about not
they are fighting each other.
Both. Yes, Wally and Thug Rose they're fighting this weekend. So that's the thing. I'm gonna have to not like. I don't know. I don't want either of them to win. I just want it to be.
They're fighting each other. No.
Yes, they're fighting each other this weekend.
Yeah,
I know. So I'm stoked.
It's actually really great for women's MMA this weekend too, because Valentina Shevchenko is fighting Jessica Andrade this weekend as well for the flyweight title. So it's really good. In
this sport, I mean, women and everything are kind of like swept under the rug a little bit, but especially in this sport, you know, but women go ham compared to the men.
They're really
when Joanna and Wally, when they fought, they went all 5 rounds, and by the end, Joanna had this massive like
she had a hematoma.
It was nonstop. Like women fighters are crazy. I mean, crazy in all the right ways, but like so underrated.
I do thoroughly believe that the women's pain threshold is high.
Yo, are you kidding?
Well, and I think too a big thing is that like men typically you have the power advantage of like a lot of male fighters might not need the same technique because they have the knockout power.
Right.
You can be kind of sloppy. Whereas women, especially in like MMA, or even when we watch people like Katie Taylor in boxing or Clarissa Shields, like
I love Katie Taylor.
There's not only like this nice aggression that's there that you need for a combat sport, but there's the technique is flawless. Yeah. So
I think women have a lot to prove though, because in the world we're viewed as less than or weaker and like not as aggressive as men. So like how could we be combative in combat sports? So we have to have that technique, because if we just go out then people will be like, oh, well, they didn't have the right technique. No. You know what I mean? So it's like, we have to check all those boxes they do for them to be the best, and then not to, you know what I mean? Not to be looked down at.
You're 100% right.
They have a lot to prove.
It's a really nice showcase this weekend for of some of the greatest female fighters of all time.
Okay, guys, let's bring it back a little bit to PHAROS and the fight program specifically. What is our goal with this program? What message do we want to send out? Where are we going? What are we doing?
To learn, to be be a smart fighter. I think big thing is opponent awareness, because we're not always going to be sparring somebody. To be able to see that opponent in front of you and do things, to be able to get to a position where you can react on your own. So you can imagine a situation that's happening and there's a why to everything. You're not just shooting at the bag, whatever. I'm doing this for a reason. I'm coming down here in a slip for a reason. I'm pulling away for a reason. So there's always going to be a why in my classes.
Nice.
For me, everybody's welcome and everybody's going to level up. No matter how long you've been fighting, whether you're a novice or you're professional, I think everybody's going to learn something from us. And I think that we train intellect. Yeah. Always. And even if you don't plan on being a fighter, let's get you as close to the fight as possible. You know, let's make you a smart fighter, not just, I only know how to strike. You know, I know how to defend. I know to do footwork. I know how to move my head. I know different stances. I know how to fight both stances. Let's get you to be as best as you can at something that you care about.
Yeah.
You know,
And let's say you're not going to like go out on a fight, your endurance level is going to shoot up.
Yeah,
you know,
I mean,
so
there's a lot of people here who don't give a fuck about fighting.
totally.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
they're just
Totally,
doing it
but
for
there
fitness.
is so
Yeah.
much more. But you're like, we're not training you to, because we're not going to expect you to fight. It has a lot of benefits just in your regular fitness journey, which I think will be great for people.
I think that's where I come at it too. Is that I agree with both of the things that you said, and also just having just a full body routine, something that connects mind, body, and being able to move it as a unit. To practice your balance, your footwork, like you said, and something that you're going to be able to do for the rest of your life. Like this is the combinations and things you learn. Yes, you may or may not have to use them. Hopefully not, but at the same time, it is a exercise. It is a mental state that you can continue to progress in. It's a skill you're going to learn for the rest of your life. And it again, it pulls your whole body together. It's the same thing that I try to do with all of my workouts, whether it's Olympic weightlifting or sprinting and stuff. Like the way that chimps move and how like every single muscle is connected. It's the same thing with fighting. Everything is connected.
Yeah.
It is,
And so
yeah.
I really love that approach.
Yeah. Well, it's for me. It's also it's kind of like the ultimate functional training.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Perfectly said.
Totally.
Because you're using your body in space. You know, the sweat's pouring off you. You're constantly doing different things. You're always on your toes. You're always using your brain.
Yes.
It's putting all these things together. The sport just has a wonderful flow to it. It's a great way, like we've been saying, to just get generally fit, to raise your GPP, your general physical preparedness, at the same time as learning a new skill, at the same time as just having a great time and having fun.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, you'll have
Because-
fun.
I'm going to
It's
change my
fun.
answer to what you said.
goddamn
Just my
fun.
answer is exactly what Pete said.
Yeah.
It's really well said.
It's fun, guys.
Yeah.
And I'm so excited for people to come in and experience this and to work with you guys. I mean, we have a fight class every day right now, and we're going to be launching a lot more as the year progresses. I just want people to do it and experience it and have fun with it and see the gift of it.
What Aaron Michael said though, everyone is welcome. It like don't be afraid
Don't
to
be
come
afraid,
because
yeah.
I get it whether you're a man or a woman. You can be like, but it's like a combat sport. It's like it's so much more than just hitting something or somebody.
Exactly.
So like what you said, Aaron Michael, everybody is welcome, and you can start at 0. Or you can start at the level 100 and you're still going to learn something no matter what.
Because we always start every session from the ground up. So everything, doesn't matter what level you're at, we always start with the basics because everybody always needs to know the basics. So
Fundamentals.
always the fundamentals. You'll never be out of place here. Okay, this is what I want to kind of finish and wrap up with. And this can be to do with combat.
Okay.
Or it can be to do with anything.
Yeah.
My producer Brandon's going to start the clock. It's going to be a 1 minute drill. You're each going to have 1 minute to think about your purpose on this planet. Okay. Now, you don't have to think about your whole purpose. You just have to think of 3 words that would be contained within your purpose.
Defeat capitalism. Well, it's 2 words.
I run a small business. It's kind of capitalism.
I know.
I don't see you as the capitalist that I'm worried about.
Yeah, you don't need to worry about my family
Damn
finances.
Koch brothers.
Your last name isn't Bezos.
So 3 words, any 3 words that would
God.
be contained within your purpose can be anything. You ready with the clock, Brandon?
Wait,
3.
does it have to be like an adjective or can it
Can be anything you want.
only
Any 3
pronoun.
words. It can be blancmange,
my purpose?
whatever you want. Okay, ready? 3, 2, 1. Do Americans use the word blancmange, by the way?
No.
Oh.
Wait, you guys talking? It's I can't think.
I'll be quiet now.
I already know mine.
We look
shit.
down upon big fancy words, especially with that many G's. Americans can't.
Blancmange. What a beautiful word.
Yeah.
Blancmange.
Sometimes just want to just go to Glengarry Glen Ross and be like, always be closing.
Oh, yeah. Coffees for closers.
Coffees for closers. Yeah, I know mine too, though.
You wanna run down?
It's very similar.
Oh
know.
God,
I think,
I feel so put on the spot right now.
We'll start with Graham.
Yeah.
right?
You'll have time to think while they're working.
Yeah, perfect.
No, I got mine too. But
What do you guys like know your?
Just, yeah.
we're older than you. We've had more time to think.
I mean, I know what I want to do on this earth. You know.
Seconds.
10 seconds.
9, 8, 7, 6.
Ding, 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 tiddly-dee, bing. Okay,
You said you
Aaron Michael, you go
Aaron
first.
Michael, you go.
Mine, 3 words.
Yeah.
Learn,
Oh, Jesus.
create, express.
Ooh. Do you want to embellish a little?
I'll leave it at that.
I like that. I like your style.
Create is also one of mine. Create, improve, and I guess I could go with authentic or authenticity.
Ooh, I like that.
Is that right?
Authenticity. Okay, Katie-Michal.
Well, yeah, I guess I'm gonna be like true to myself, right?
Yeah. Wow, you have to be.
I mean, I'm gonna say act, but I could also say create, and that's more well-rounded. And then I want to just say love, truly.
There you go.
You got to spread the love, right? Love to
course.
yourself, love to other people. The world needs a little bit more.
It does, always.
World peace.
Yes. Hi.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Miss Reno.
Oh God, Miss Reno, what does that look like? I'm wearing like a card dress. You know?
So wait, so that was create, love. Was there a third one?
Truth
True.
was-
Yeah,
Oh,
truth.
truth.
Truth to
Truth.
yourself.
There you go.
Be true to yourself.
Love that.
But like,
Well, it's interesting that you all said create because you are 3 creative souls,
It's
right?
true.
You are all artists.
What is that, left brain
Yeah.
or something?
I don't
What
know.
is that, right brain?
yeah, whichever side is really smooth.
It's my good side.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
go on. Now you go.
I was gonna say, no matter the medium, sometimes you have to make do with whatever you have. But as long as you can create something, you know, whether it be photography, painting, radio, film, editing,
Podcasts.
you know, podcasts,
Yes.
dancing, you
Even
know, whatever.
fighting. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's a huge
Yeah.
thing that people leave out when you go into like, you talk about heart and you talk about skill. It's like creativity is a huge one,
Oh yeah.
which we see in some
I
of
mean,
the
we
best
create our own
fighters.
workouts for ourselves. We create classes for y'all
Or
every
just
Sunday
even-
at 10:15.
You are
AM.
you guys are actors that became fighters.
Yes.
Yeah.
Has anybody been a fighter that became a successful actor? Definitely not Ronda Rousey.
Definitely not
No.
Ronda Rousey.
Bruce Lee?
Well, Bruce Lee grew up in a theatrical
Yeah, he actually
family.
started. His
started
first film was
in-
10 years old.
Yeah, he started, but it's a good one. It is you.
I think that's
you
the
are, I
closest.
think that's the closest, Aaron. That's
No,
yeah,
I
for
think
sure.
everybody's gonna. I feel like me and us 3 will probably be the first like fighters, and then
Yeah,
become
yeah.
successful actors.
I mean, but you do have successful
Like actual
actors
successful
that do compete, or even people who are in a different field. Like Anthony Bourdain was he won a few jiu-jitsu competitions. You have Keanu Reeves doing the same thing in
Right.
jiu-jitsu. Like you have people that can learn some skills. I think with seeing what they're making GSP do a little bit in the Marvel
Yeah.
franchise, you kind of get at it. But it's a skill, and it's a skill that in the same way as anything else, if you're going to do it to the best of your ability, you not only need to be obsessed with it,
Yeah.
but it's something that you learn. It's not something that you just walk in and just say, hey, I'm going to be completely vulnerable and authentic in front of a whole cast of people while also memorizing lines and emotionally manipulating myself.
Right.
And so it's not something that people can't do, but it's something that I think when it comes to athletics, you need to treat it the same way as your athletic career. How much time and practice did you put into it? It's not something that you're just going to walk in and do perfectly.
Yeah. And it's also difficult because you have identified your whole life as one thing. Like
Yes.
you have identified yourself as a fighter, and there's a certain alpha imagery or an alpha perception that goes with that. And I think it can be very hard for people to shed that and then become something else. Because
Right.
acting is the world of pretend, right? I'm pretending to be someone else.
Yes.
And I think it's very
That's
hard
why I
for them.
love it.
It's very hard for them to just not be the fighter that they've always been.
Well, and especially because like they're hired because they do come in with a name. If you hire
Right.
like Michael Bisping
Yeah.
for something, and it's like,
Michael-
well, that's Bisping. That's not.
Bisping was in a David Lynch
So they're
Twin
good-
Peaks episode.
Yes, he
It's
was.
good
He
when
did
they
really
play
well. He did
themselves. Like when
Right.
people aren't actors and you just want them for the
themselves,
name.
yeah.
Just play yourself, and then it's like, oh yeah.
And, and I think with what you're saying too, with like a big part of it too is the production and the director as well. Because I'm pretty sure David Lynch could make anyone look good
Look good,
because
yeah.
he's fantastic.
What about the dude from what's it called? He was in Blade Runner 2049 in the beginning. He's in the new Dune.
Batista.
Yeah.
He was good, but he was a WWE guy. So I classify him
Still
more as an
like-
actor than
But he was an athlete.
What, Dave
before he
Bautista?
was an
Like,
actor.
I mean, he's
And he's
very
great.
athletic.
Yeah.
And
But was he ever a fighter?
no.
He was-
I mean,
he was in-
He wrestled.
he did do a professional MMA fight.
Oh, he
or
did?
two. But like, but coming from that WWE background, he's 100% he is athletic. And he might be the anomaly in this conversation.
He's got
but
some chops, though.
I would put him as an actor first, because having to come out with a persona and sell the fight every single night, especially on those regional circuits that they do, I would put him as like, dude, he's doing theater every night.
Well, wait a minute. If we go down that road, we can talk about Dwayne Johnson, right? Because
But I
Yeah, but he's. But
He
I mean,
plays himself
The
up,
Rock
though,
wasn't
like,
in
in
Blade
every
Runner
movie.
2049 either.
that's the criteria. Were you in Blade Runner or not?
right.
That is though very good example. I think that Batista's a nice bridge to cross with that.
It's possible. Anything's possible.
It is.
Yeah.
It can be. It
can be done.
I'm just,
It can be
I'm
done.
just being salty.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, we better wrap it up there. Great podcast, guys.
Yeah,
Thanks for
great
joining me.
podcast.
Thank
That was
you.
awesome.
Having us.
Having us.
If you're listening to this and you want to come take a boxing class, you want to join the fight program, please do. We are at 1316 Glendale Boulevard in Echo Park. We're going to be doing some great things this year with these three captains of industry, captains of the
Nice.
fight industry.
That's us.
Yes.
So yeah, come see us.
T-shirts?
You can follow us at PHAROS Echo Park. Graham, what's your Instagram?
Oh, it's just for my acting. It's Graham Jenkins 1, and with just like the number. And for here, we have Fight at PHAROS.
Fight at
we're
PHAROS.
We're gonna be
Follow
putting
that.
up more and more videos of all three of us and kind of
technique and different punches to throw.
Yes.
Aaron Michael.
You can find me at Harvey Leche.
Harvey Leche.
If you want boxing, you can find me at Coach Harvey Leche.
There you go.
Mine is Katie-Michal Pullen, so it's KATIEMICHALPULLEN.
Don't get it wrong, guys.
You
Don't
can't
get it
get it wrong because the Michael is a girl Michael, quote unquote, whatever.
Right.
Michael.
Yeah, and then my coach one is Coach_KMP.
There you go,
So
guys.
follow us on Instagram.
Exactly. All right, guys.
Your evening news.
Thanks again, guys. Awesome. We will catch you real soon out there, and thanks for listening. See you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.